Thanks. That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so Ashley, you started recording?
Yes.
Okay. So this project originally started through a service request to MSMD. Here's a picture of the erosion behind Brock's house, coming from our storm drainage easement from this tributary. This is a tributary 1 on the design plans looking upstream. This is coming into our outfall, into the main channel that we'll be restoring. John and I went out to scope and see what the condition of the channel was, and this photo is rather representative of the erosion within the channel. Walking down the channel to where we're tying out, we can see that there's another tributary that's deeply eroded, and it's affecting that end wall from the pipe system as well. You can see behind it, there's the signs for the park entrance where we're proposing construction and access. Access we're proposing to come in here. There'll be a stockpile area on the right here. But then generally we found that there was a good place to kind of tie out downstream of where this tributary 2 on the design plans ties out into the stream. And so in order to restore and stabilize the tributary 1, we've came up with the scope of the project extending through the whole extent that you see on the grading plan. I'll pull up the grading plan now, and then John, I'll let you talk about the design.
Okay. You want me to share my screen in case I have to point or?
Or I could share as well.
Whatever works for you. Am I going to be able to request control if you share?
Maybe not. Okay. You can share your screen.
Yeah, I think I've had that problem with the county teams before. Let me know when you have it on your screen. Is it up?
Yes.
Good to go?
Okay. Yep.
Perfect. I'll just start, since it's a really small crew, I'm going to give some overall stuff. There probably is going to be more specific questions considering, the few folks that are on, so I can, at any point in time, you can kind of jump in. I don't expect it's going to be overwhelming with 3 people. I guess to start with, as Rachel said, access is coming in from the Park Authority on Timberlake Court. You can see at the bottom left of my screen here, we come down through the cul-de-sac. We have a construction entrance there, and then just the way the sheet's broken up kind of comes down. We have a small staging area right by where the pipe comes out at the head wall. And I believe the playground is over on the other side of the trail there, right, Rachel? So
you can see the extent of the playground starting on the map there. And so there is a path leading to the playground, which for the most part is outside of our limits. Where it gets to the construction entrance, we can talk about keeping a plan to keep that open during construction.
Right. Yeah. So typically we have like an orange safety fence that would follow the perimeter of our construction entrance. In this case, we may want to do something a little bit more substantial if people are going to continue using the park. So the on-road trucks are going to be coming in. This is the entrance. They will be coming in, dumping the material. We have 2 staging areas shown on the plan here. A little bit bigger one kind of down to the left. And that area pretty much now is, I don't want to call it an open meadow, but it's fairly open. I don't know if there was some wind that blew trees down there at one point in time, but it's a fairly open area, so it made sense from a design standpoint to use that as the access. I guess the overall project intent, Rachel showed some photos of the outfall there. Is it Brock? Is that your property? Where there's
Yeah.
it looks like the sanitary lateral as well as some, I think it's communication lines are suspended in the channel. So it's pretty obvious something needs to happen there. So, you know, these two outfalls, I think this one, the design, the proposed grade is going to raise the channel 6 to 7 feet in that area. So, you know, we're bringing up the channel, trying to, you know, get it out to access, you know, a floodplain, lower the shear stresses in the channel. So it's not blowing out the banks and eroding the entire channel and sending all that sediment downstream. So I think the overall length of the main channel is about 650 feet. The channel behind Brock's house is about 50 feet, that little outfall tributary. And then the one coming off the park is about 150 feet. I'm going to slide down to the profile real quick to kind of show the visual of how much we're raising the channel in some spots. So this is the profile of the channel behind Brock's house. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can actually see what I'm looking at. That suspended sanitary lateral, I think that's shown right here if you guys can see my cursor. So the intent is to bring up the channel so that sanitary lateral will be approximately 1 foot below the proposed channel. And then you can see down just a little bit further. I mean, each one of these blocks is 1 foot. So it's, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, just over 7 feet in that area. So it's pretty obvious. You know, these outfalls specifically on this project and even the main channel really are in some dire need of some restoration. I'm gonna. You can see parts of the main channel as well. We're raising the channel up to 7 feet in some areas.
Brock, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a really quick question. If you could go back to that last one. I don't know if you want me asking questions now or if you want me to hold them till the end.
That's fine. It's just a few people on here. I do kind of have a hard stop around 10 o'clock, so I think we're in good shape.
Oh, okay. So my only question is, so I see the raise there. Is there a plan, and it doesn't appear so, but I just want to clarify, is there a plan to extend the concrete pipe out past, you know, like maybe to the edge of my property or something, so it dumps out in and then hopefully avoids any further erosion in the future? Or is it still, are we still keeping the pipe as is, just filling it in and then potentially leading to further erosion in, you know, 10, 15 years? I'm just asking.
No, that's fine. The pipe is going to end where it's at now. We're really confident in our design methodology because we're going to raise it up. We're not just going to raise it up with like clay or fill.
Okay.
This cap material is it's like a riprap mix of cobble and, you know, like we're importing what we call a stream bed mix, a reinforced bed mixture. So it is going to be an armored stone that the water's going to flow on top. And then we'll have stable side slopes. Since we're bringing the channel up, we'll be able to achieve like some pretty gentle side slopes to the channel. As far as permitting and everything goes, the agencies don't really like to extend pipes, and, you know, pipes are what have caused a lot of the problems. The you know, the impervious surface and the piping of the stormwater accelerates the stormwater. So what we're trying to do is, you know, once it comes out of that pipe, we're trying to decrease the velocities and shear stress in the channels to really, you know, just so everything's more stable. But you know, we've done a lot of these outfall projects for Fairfax. I think we're probably up around 40 of them now in just the last few years. Had great success with them, and we've been doing, you know, stream restoration on a larger scale for a long time. So I'm pretty confident in the methodology.
Copy.
I'm going to go back up to the plan view. I'm not an engineer, but if I start using some terms you're not familiar with as well, Brock, sometimes I throw around things like shear stress or side slopes. Just ask the question. I can certainly do some better explanation on that.
Okay, thanks.
So back to the plan view. So once we get into that staging and stockpile area, you kind of see this darker shaded area within our limits of disturbance. That's going to be our access road to go to get all the way up to the top of the stream channel from the stockpile in the construction entrance. So it's likely, the trucks are going to be coming in here. We're going to start the work at the top, work our way downstream, fix Brock's outlet channel on our way down, and then continue all the way down to the bottom through the park there. And then it will be tying out. We kind of identified a spot. Sorry to jump around. We identified a spot at the upstream limits where it was fairly stable. There was a little bit of a head cut. I think it was like a 3-foot head cut at the top. And then at the bottom, it starts to the slopes flatten out, becomes more stable. We thought that'd be a really good spot to tie out at the bottom too. As far as tree removal, that's usually a hot item, understandably so. We go in, it's necessary as part of these projects to remove trees for access. Also, a lot of the trees that are to be removed are along highly degraded banks, so they're probably going to be falling down in the next couple of years anyway as the erosion continues. There are 40 trees to be removed, and that's when I say 40 trees to be removed, that's trees over 12 inches, so there will be some smaller saplings and stuff that get taken. But when we're done with the project, we have a really extensive native replanting plan. And I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it's in the neighborhood of like 1,500 trees and shrubs we're going back in with. Does that sound right, Irene?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. And the replanting will be mostly like 1-gallon container plants. And this is more of like a reforestation project and not really a landscape project. So the smaller container plants don't require the planting the watering, because it's not really feasible to be going out and watering 1,500 trees on a regular basis. Along with the trees and shrubs we're planting, we also put down a native seed mix that has probably 15 to 20 different native species in there. Excuse me. And that really helps ecologically to get some diversity within that area. Any questions so far? Jumped around a lot.
I just have one more question, and I don't know if you'll cover this in the future, but I do have an irrigation system that runs kind of around there. I don't know if you guys had identified that, but are you going to protect that, make sure that I don't have any issues with that?
Yeah, that's a pretty common thing to work around on these outfall projects. It's going to be necessary that prior to construction, maybe at our pre-con meeting, we go out there when you're there and we put some pin flags or something in the ground to make sure if we need to cap it off, just to avoid it so we don't create an issue.
Copy. Okay.
Something a lot of people are usually interested in, like the channel dimensions. The small outfall channels are going to be about 6 feet wide, half a foot deep, roughly. The main channel is going to be 10 feet wide and 1 foot deep. Excuse me. So it's going to be a pretty small channel. Right now, we're looking at in the ground, there's probably 10 to 12 feet wide and 7 feet deep. So I think as far as safety goes, it's going to be a huge improvement ecologically, stormwater. It's going to be a big improvement to the area. Any questions from the other neighbors?
So, John, this is Neil Cronin. I think you explained one of the questions I had, but just to kind of recap that, at the start and end of this, the 600 odd feet or so of area that you're treating, did I understand you to say that the, kind of both upstream and downstream, that they're logical points because they are not as eroded as the area that you're going to be treating? Is that correct?
That is correct. I just pulled up the profile here. I don't know if you can see that, but the valley slope starts to flatten out, so it's less of an erodible area. So we identified the upstream point in the field as to where the gully or the head cut started, And then at the downstream end, it looked like kind of a natural stable area. And there was a little bit of a wetland there too we didn't want to impact.
Okay, thank you.
Have there been any other questions in the neighborhood you think you should bring up? Like Joe next door said this. We can try to address it.
Yeah, I actually, I do have a few questions, but I don't want to, interrupt your discussion because you may address them, as we continue along here.
I don't have much of a formal presentation, so you can feel free to jump right into it.
Okay, yeah, I guess let's see, probably the most obvious one is, the construction entrance. That's kind of how we're most impacted, is coming in off of our cul-de-sac. And so I just wanted to kind of get an idea, it's marked here as a proposed. I'm guessing you considered some potential other alternatives, and just like to know a little bit of background as to how that came about, and kind of, I guess, going along with that is kind of how that area will be treated. There's some portion of that in the detail down in the lower left that shows kind of a hexagonal bunch of hexagons as the background, and I didn't see that in the legend as to know what that area is. Yeah, right there, John.
So to start with, and Rachel and Jack, feel free to jump in at any time. We did, on our initial scoping walk, we said, hey, Brock brought this to our attention. It would be easiest to go through Brock's property. After walking it, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be, it would disturb a lot more than, once we got downstream further, we looked at the access coming in through the park. We already have a paved path. So the tree impacts, and I guess the impacts to all of the surroundings, were a lot less to come through the existing park trail entrance. So we did look at other areas, but it just,
yeah, I would say we considered other areas. Part of the issue of going across Brock's property and his neighboring property were the septic fields. And then the route that we chose has the least impacts to private property, in addition to staying within our easement and on county, park authority property. And that's really the route we chose. Also, due to the existing condition of that channel in the park near the playground, we were going to need to be in there working anyways. So it was the most logical place to really reduce impacts to private property.
And I have some photos of what a typical access would be if I could share my screen, and then, but maybe if you want to just describe the hexagon. So the one hexagon on there it looks like it's showing an existing concrete storm drainage structure that's going underneath the path there leading to the park. So it says existing concrete inlet, and then the other square is an erosion and sediment control. So
yeah, and we use I guess the hatching for the typical VDOT required construction entrance, which is like a wash rack and stone. I don't anticipate using that here. We'll use probably wooden deck mats. There's the deck mats there, and that's really to preserve the asphalt and tree roots. And we'll also use those wooden deck mats along our entire access road to minimize the impact to the tree roots, because we don't want to kill all the trees that were outside of the work area. So we're doing everything we can to minimize that impact.
Okay, yeah, that helps a lot, and in fact, actually, Rachel, it's almost a background. It looks like a fill material, or that's this series of hexagons, and that's kind of what I was trying to see, whether that was the deck mats that John's talking about, or what. And as you said, that kind of rectangle with a bunch of horizontal lines was, I think, I forget what you referred to it as, but it's kind of a cleaning off the wheels of the vehicles, is that correct?
Yeah, it's what they call a wash rack, which
Oh.
is typically required for a plan submission. It's not going to be implemented here.
And the
Okay.
reason why a lot of projects, you have dump trucks that are taking fill material like on your big like developments and dumping, and they're driving over the existing dirt and soil that's on site. So they're tracking mud back towards the VDOT right away or back towards the, y'all's neighborhood. In this case, with the way we implement the deck matting, these trucks that are having deliveries are not going to be tracking in dirt like they would on a normal construction site.
Yeah, Jack, that's very, very helpful because that's obviously one of our concerns in the cul-de-sac, whether there was going to be, 6 months of kind of, heavy layer of mud in and out of the construction area there. So that's
No, we'll do a good job of keeping the site clean and checking on that daily, and that should not be an issue. And if it becomes an issue, let us know and we'll address it accordingly.
all right.
And
Great, thank you.
that we could also address too, so the time and frame and duration. So we still have to get a task order to complete the construction. So it would take a few weeks, maybe a month. Where we have a meeting with Park Authority coming up, and we have our own internal process. But once we get that set up, I mean, Kyle, what's your best estimate so far for timing and duration?
I think Carlos will be the crew that'll be completing this project. So I think he'll be wrapping up Rolling Creek hopefully around or right after Thanksgiving. And then we'd be transitioning into this project would be the best plan we have at the moment.
Yeah, Kyle, could you say again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Is it to get under contract after Thanksgiving?
No, I think we'd be looking to start breaking ground and starting with clearing and access. Hopefully after Thanksgiving would be our goal at this point.
I see, yeah. And as far as duration?
I think at this point in time, probably 6 to 7 months. And then, once the large part of my scope is done, planting will occur for this project most likely in the fall because we'll be finishing late spring, early summer. So we'll come back out during the planting window and reforest, as John had mentioned earlier, in the appropriate planting windows. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Neil, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, let's see. I guess we talked the schedule pretty well. And I think, Rachel, maybe where you were going is that some of this will be done over the winter. Much of the work will be done over the winter months, but extending into the spring, it sounds like maybe into, June timeframe or so from what you said, Kyle. So that's very helpful. I guess the sheer volume of work, in terms of how many vehicles, I guess you guys must have a pretty good idea, John and Kyle, as to, how many truckloads of material you'll be moving in and out through that entrance. Can you give us, just some idea of that? I mean, is it 100 trucks over a 3-month period, or, I don't really have a clue how much volume we're talking about here.
Sure. For daily, the crew will normally have 2 or so pickup trucks, which will, once we have our entrance established, we'll be parking inside the site. Then there's project management staff, myself, Rachel's group, Jack's group, who will be on site throughout the week. So there'll be that kind of traffic that's somewhat consistent. But as John mentioned before, there's quite a bit of fill that needs to come to raise the channel. So there'll be, it's not a huge development project like Jack mentioned, but we will have a pretty steady amount of material coming into the site, whether that be deck mats, fill, rock, mulch, kind of all of that. So there's quite a bit of import on this job.
Kyle, how many trucks at like Rolling Creek, for instance, do you have coming in on average a week? That might be a good reference.
Yeah, John, that's kind of exactly what
Okay.
I was kind of looking for.
If we're not in a large section of fill, we're probably getting a handful of deliveries, under 10 deliveries a week of rock coming in. On days that we need a lot of fill, we'll probably have 3 or 4 trucks running throughout the day. But that won't be for the entire duration of the project. That'll just be when we need imported fill materials. We'll have
Yeah,
heavier trucking days.
Neil, that project's pretty similar to this. It's actually
Yeah.
a little bit bigger, so I would expect this is going to be a little bit less.
Yep.
Okay, okay. And how, I guess, size-wise, how many, when you talk about the trucks bringing the material in, are these big? I don't even know how many axle machines they are or whatever, but just trying to get an idea of, again, the volume.
Yeah, they're the big dump trucks you see on 66. Whether
Yeah,
they're,
okay, that's helpful.
yeah.
Because one of the concerns, obviously, we were very, very fortunate that the state came in and redid our neighborhood, or at least our side of the neighborhood, with all new paved streets after 25 years of, kind of pretty beat up streets, and the idea of, upwards of, I don't know what that works out to, but, potentially 40 deliveries per month or something for a 5 or 6 month period. There's obviously some concern in the neighborhood about tearing up the streets, just getting that material in, because obviously loaded up with a lot of heavy rock material and that kind of fill, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we'll these trucks, the axles, they have the right amount of axles, so they're not displacing too much weight per square foot. So they are on-road rubber tired vehicles. So I want to anticipate an issue with that. But we will during the pre-construction meeting, whether it's a video or taking pictures of all access points to make sure anything that's damaged is definitely fixed.
Yeah, we'll need to document the existing asphalt condition really well, Rachel. And then if there's obvious damage, rectify that on our end as part of the project.
Yeah, okay, that's very helpful. From a very parochial standpoint, I was interested in the material, the mud tracking and stuff like that too, as to.
Yeah, I mean, our intent is to have a nice, clean project and leave the area better than how we found it.
Okay.
Obviously, we can't do that with the trees. We can't put 40-foot tall trees back in, but we do address that through our revegetation. But asphalt, trails, turf grass, those sorts of things that we might temporarily damage and or change during the project, we will make right at the end of it as part of our restoration plan.
Okay, great. And from what you said earlier, Jack, it sounds like you guys are very much considering, with all the use of the deck mats and stuff like that, the wooden deck mats, that even during the construction, again, it's not like it's going to be, a mud-filled cul-de-sac here with, trucks arriving, a couple of times a day.
It'll be a very clean ran operation. Russ does a very good job, and it's our role, Rachel and Ashi's role, to make sure that the site's in a clean condition for the most part.
Okay.
I mean, still a construction job, don't get me wrong, but
yes,
we're not going to be making a mess of the place.
And one thing I would also mention with the trees is a lot of these trees are going to be reused in the design as habitat and logs. So the trees that we are cutting down, we're going to be putting back in John and Irene's design here. So.
okay.
And I have some photos there too. So, thankfully, again, with this design, we were able to avoid a lot of tree impacts with the access road coming in off of the Park Authority access where they already have a trail. And then the open area for staging. But a lot of the trees that are coming out are adjacent to the channel like this. And I think John mentioned they're already kind of leaning, and over time, if the erosion were to continue, they would fall anyway. So there's also maybe a little bit unique to this project, a lot of kind of smaller erosion areas underneath the tree roots themselves up and down the channel. You can see where somebody put boards over it. You've got 3 large mature trees and they're been completely eroded up and underneath those root systems. So that's kind of typical, which I don't see on every project, but it's unique to Madison Meadows. And then some of those structures where we reuse the logs, in the end, it might just look like this. So this is a log sill. The log extends much. This is also a smaller channel than what we will have out at Madison Meadows, but the log extends farther underground that you can't see. But the idea is, it'll be kind of covered under the water to keep that saturated, so you may not see it. Then we have.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Brock, that shows that armored rock material that's going to be capping the stream as well. You were worried about the erosion.
Okay, copy. Thanks.
Here's an example of one of the habitat log structures. We got here's a wider channel, so this might be a little bit more representative of what we might encounter. There are many log structures like this on this design for this project, as well as boulder pools. So boulder pools are the other, boulder pools and step pools are the other kind of structure that's really incorporated into this design. So there's boulder pools, and I think I have a couple other pictures for step pools. Here's some step pools here. So another example of step pools in action during a rain event. Here's some step pools in a dry channel or ephemeral channel, and then there's some others. So this is kind of representative of what we would expect the project to kind of look like afterwards.
Yeah, those are very helpful, actually, Rachel, to see those, to get an idea. I think one of the big concerns, with just the tree removal, obviously, is, kind of what impact. It's kind of hard to see, as you mentioned, John. There's, somewhere between 35 and 40 trees, I think, marked for removal.
Right.
And it's really hard to get a sense for. That's one of the things we loved about living here for 30 years is that we've got this beautiful green screen, in the foliage season. So it's kind of hard to see, but it does seem like it's, it seems like it's an awful lot of timber that's coming down there. And again, I appreciate that, without seeing it, but some of the pictures that Rachel showed, that some of them are on the banks of the stream anyway and are likely to come down. But that's again kind of a concern that we have of of that many trees coming down.
And
Yeah.
so last time I was out there, I spoke with you and your neighbor Judith, and she had the same concern. And so, her property's here and yours is right here. And so you can see even behind your house, there will still be a privacy screen of all these trees that will not be impacted in between our work area and the channel. So you can see the trees with the X's through them, show the trees that need to be removed for us to access and/or because they're falling in or leaning or at risk of leaning.
Yeah, and I'll add couple of things to that. Is that if you take a look at the tree removal schedule on sheet 7 of the plan, and you really like dive into the trees that we're calling to remove, and then look at the health rating, which was established by a certified arborist, you'll notice that the trees that we're calling to remove are the ones that are either in poor condition, like as previously mentioned, or we expect it could be in poor condition in the near future. So if you're looking at the health ratings of 3s and 4s, with 1 being the best, 4 being the worst, those X's on the TBR, the to be removed column, are mostly 3s and 4s that we're calling to remove. So I think it's just something to keep in mind when we talk about the tree removal. And then also, I mean, if there's a certain tree that is near and dear to someone, and there's an opportunity to try and save it, then we will address that at our pre-construction meeting and do our best to try and save it. I think it's something that we're good about being flexible and understanding in that regard. The design itself is rather conservative when it looks at the tree removal and going on the safe side to remove trees, just because there is an opportunity that we could impact the tree roots on a tree, especially like poplars. They're very sensitive to grading and construction impacts. And we don't want to have the situation where we have to come back in and remove a bunch of trees later. So just a few things to keep in mind.
Yeah, Jack, that's actually very, very helpful to see that with the tree conditions. And
Like if you look at that block right there in the middle of the screen, they're all tulip poplars, and they're all, in poor health, or, or what is it? Stress and require significant management or treatment, or is in, serious decline or dead. And, I get the screening and the tree removal, but if we have an opportunity to, take out a handful of tulip poplars and then come back in with something more native, I see that as a net win for the forested area out here. So that's just, I know it's going to take some time for those trees to come up, but usually in like 5 to 7 years, you have pretty good coverage, even with the 1 gallon material.
all right, good, thank you. I guess one other question I had is relative to kind of the daily, and maybe it's a Kyle question of kind of what kind of equipment. Are these Bobcats you have in there, or are they bigger front end loaders, or, and that'll be operating kind of day to day down there?
Sure. So kind of as John mentioned, it'll be full size equipment, not the same size as a housing development per se, but there'll be large excavators. A typical stream package of equipment will be 2 hydraulically operated thumbed excavators to set rock and logs, then a smaller grading excavator to help kind of shape sides. We'll have an off-road dump truck, and there will be a Bobcat skid steer on site as well to manage deck mats and any other smaller material. So it's a decent sized amount of equipment coming onto the site to perform the work. It's required to have that size of material to kind of move efficiently, or equipment to move the material efficiently, and also the large boulders we're using for the step pools and the sills. They are quite heavy, so it requires a larger machine to handle those rocks.
Okay, that's a good rundown. And those will be operating, kind of 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30 or whatever, right? Daily basis.
Yeah, so we start at the Fairfax County noise ordinance. We follow that, which starts at 7 a.m. and typical crew will work from 7 to 5. Normally Fridays they'll leave a little bit earlier, maybe 3 or 3:30, but generally our hours are 7 to 5. We normally don't work weekends, but if we were to have a large rain event and lose some time during the middle of the week or beginning of the week, we'll possibly work weekends. The noise ordinance in Fairfax starts at 9 a.m. and then I think it ends, 6 on Saturday. But this crew, typically, I don't see that happening. that requires to work weekends, but if we need to make up time due to weather, we will work weekends. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
That covers everything on our agenda. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, so I think, Rachel, just kind of a very general question, kind of as a alternatives considered. I mean, I think this all got started. Clearly, something needs to be done at Brock's property with him, losing eroding material away. But kind of, if this isn't done, what kind of is the expectation? I mean, is it that the stream's going to just continue to deteriorate, over that 600-foot section, or, I mean, kind of what is the,
Sure, so they're both upstream and downstream impacts, and I'll let John answer
Yeah,
that.
so I may not give the most appropriate explanation of like stream evolution,
Yeah.
but kind of the typical evolution of an urban stream. Probably your house was built in 1960. I'm just guessing time frame, 1960, 1970. So as the area was developed, you have a whole bunch of like shallow farm swales that were coming down through the area. And then the streams, as the velocities of the water increased, start cutting down. So they will continue to cut down usually until they hit bedrock. And then they start widening. So initially it just gets deep, it's narrow and deep, and then it starts widening. So through that process, that's when you start losing all the trees that are on the banks. And then this stream will try to form a stable channel at a lower elevation. Since this area is all built out, there isn't a whole lot of room for the stream channel just to meander around. So we're trying to bring it back up to a stable condition. Irene, you're much more in the weeds on that sort of thing than I am. Did that sound good enough?
Yes, that's basically that's basically how we approach the size and the entire design. We're trying to get it to be a stable size geometry to be able to handle all the water that's coming in.
One
So
little interesting piece of history. I think, Brock, your house was built in probably 2004, I believe.
Oh, I was way off.
Yeah, well, Brock's house is newer. The rest of us are a little bit older. Mine's 1974. But Brock's backyard was actually a pond, and it was filled in. So there wasn't always fill there. It wasn't filled in. So obviously that changed in 2004.
Right.
Yeah, somebody told me that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go back. I mean, the Fairfax County site, you can go back and you can see aerial views back to the 1930s of how
Oh,
things
wow.
you can see the farmland, and then you can see how there was a pond back there up until 2004.
Wow.
So John and Irene did a great job talking about the stream evolution, and I think that is kind of easy to visualize in the channel section where we'll be restoring. Two other points. One is that erosion would, without stabilization, would continue upstream. The other point is that downstream of this, there's a pond that another part of the MSMD Storm and Infrastructure Branch currently looking into doing a project. That pond has been silted in with sediment that has come from this section of stream that is eroded. So any work that we do in this stream section is also going to be beneficial to that downstream pond.
Yeah, Rachel, is that down by Timberline Drive?
Yes.
Is that the area? I know they've a couple of times tried to address that area there, and I kind of expected that this was maybe going down that far, but it's actually going, well short of that, because it's going to the about where the park is, where the playground is, and really not much further than that. But yeah, so you described that, Rachel, that, and I think Irene, when you discuss that evolution, is that it's probably to the point now where it's worn down to the level, and now it's going to start widening. Is that kind of the concern, and start taking trees down with it? Is that,
Yeah, I think you're already down to bedrock in some areas there, so it can't go any deeper. So the shear stress in the channel is starting to bang off the sides. So yeah, it is widening at this point in time.
And the photos that Rachel showed of the tree roots being exposed, that's kind of what's happening. The banks are pushing to the side, so that's why you're seeing all this undercut under the tree roots.
okay.
And then it's also the head cuts are migrating up those two tribs towards county maintained stormwater infrastructure. Which if it continues to do that and they collapse, then we're in there doing emergency work, and we have an obligation to maintain that infrastructure, specifically our branch. And so there's several benefits to this project that we see from a stormwater ecological perspective.
Yeah, and I don't think we mentioned it, but we are replacing the end section of the pipe there at Timberlake, kind of where we're coming in. Since that area has eroded down, the head wall is already starting to settle and collapse. So that repair is part of this project as well.
Okay. Yeah, kind of, I asked that, I don't mean to sound like I'm not in my backyard, but, you know, obviously this is, you know, significant impact, you know, potentially to quality of life with, you know, this much work going on over a 6 or 7 month period. And so it's helpful that you started with the, you know, what is it that we're trying to correct here?
Yeah. And, you know, I've met with many communities over the last 15 years or so, and you know, a lot of people that were against the project in the beginning, you know, once we're done and they start seeing everything, I truly believe it's going to be an asset to the community. It's certainly going to be a lot safer for, you know, people walking around the stream channel through there.
Yeah, will those paths that are used for the construction, I think some of your pictures, Rachel, kind of almost showed mulched areas, you know, will those, you know, still be walkable or something, you know, along the stream, or is that all going to be,
They're
is
going to be
that not really
reforested.
the intent? Sorry, say again, John?
They're going to be reforested.
Reforest, okay, so that's going to
Yeah.
just be, that's where all the plantings will be going.
Yeah. Yeah, so there'll be a tree planted approximately 6 foot on center. A lot of times, you know, people do walk up and down the stream a lot, so you end up with like a little foot trail. But the intent is for it to be reforested.
We do have a whole lot of deer here. There's more deer than people, so I don't know how that's going to affect what you plant and how long it lives.
They certainly impact it. We plant at a higher density, knowing that Mother Nature, whether it's drought or herbivory deer, are going to knock some of them back. You know, we don't expect every tree that we plant 6 foot on center to become, you know, mature trees, but hopefully we get a bunch of them that survive.
Well, we saw all the blueberries in the list of planting, so the more of those, the better.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, one more.
Do we?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask one more quick question, and you may have already mentioned it, but did I understand you're starting at the top of the stream and working your way down? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Copy.
Yeah, as far as kind of next steps, there, you know, I know there's an approval process, I guess a final approval for the go-ahead for the project. Are there any other, you know, discussions, you know, any other input that you're looking for from adjacent property owners, or any chance to impact any of that? And the reason I ask is, you know, we've answered a bunch of questions today, which is all very, very helpful, but you know, one of our neighborhood experts kind of in the construction business that couldn't be with us today, you know, he was able to print out, you know, full-size copies of the plans you sent me yesterday, Rachel, so that's been very, very helpful. But, you know, I plan to go over some of the results of our discussion here today with him. So can you give me an idea just kind of what the next steps are and timing of that?
Sure. So the design is final. We are ready to get this project under task order for construction. And we're pretty, so this meeting, the purpose of this meeting is more for information that this project will be happening. We will be meeting with Park Authority. We have some other details to sort out in terms of park operations, and I think one of those items will be how we are going to maintain pedestrian access to the playground during construction. And so we'll have, well, that, I think that's our biggest outstanding action item before we can really get started and mobilize.
Yeah, and even, during construction, we want to be an open book with you and the whole community, because the more everybody's educated on the topic, it's just going to be easier for all of us. So, I mean, if there's a small meeting that needs to happen to bring somebody up to speed, I'm happy to be a part of that. And then during construction, we'll certainly, I don't know if we'll have a community liaison on this project or not, but somebody will be communicating with everybody. Hey, this is where we're at, time-wise, schedule-wise. Just, things change, it's construction, just to keep everybody informed.
And I do have everyone's email addresses, who you forwarded this invite to. And so when we are ready to mobilize, I can send another email to just give an update on the project schedule. And so that's another avenue. If there are any questions come up, that you can send me and Ashi an email, and then we can get back to you